So I feel like everybody has experienced one way or shape or another some annoying neighbors, maybe coworkers in their lives. In this particular story, I want to just kind of do a breakdown of one of the most annoying neighbors I think I will ever have. I hope this will be the only one I will ever have. So, growing up, I actually lived in the middle of the country. My closest neighbors were actually this elderly couple who owned a farm right next door to us. So they were super friendly, very nice people. Like, I couldn't have asked for better people to grow up next to. They were like my second grandparents. They would let us, sled on their hills, invite us over during their own family gatherings. And when I grew up, I always thought, hey, that's how it's always gonna be. And boy, oh boy, was I wrong. So, after moving out of my parents' house at 18, I ended up actually moving to a Amish country, like in some apartment buildings out there. And again, it was another fortunate kind of situation. I actually never saw any of my neighbors. I lived in a two-story apartment building. It was more of like an efficiency apartment. And for those of you who don't know, I basically an efficiency apartment is all of the furniture is already there. And it's just a pull-out bed, a kitchen and a bathroom. It's very, very tiny, but it was super worth it. There was a graveyard right across the street that I was able to kind of, go over and take a walk around. It was always really nice, and it was such a well kept area and very heavily secure. So, when I decided to move closer to the city, into, I wouldn't say like big city area. I'm in one of those outskirts, like suburban areas where the houses are pretty close to each other. And going from living in two places in the middle of nowhere to moving into a city was a big, big change to say the least. I was definitely not prepared for the situations that I now have brought myself into. So, I live in a house, and my neighbors are separated basically by a driveway, but very close together. I mean, if you were to yell in your own bathroom, you could probably hear the other people. It's very, very close. And I'm going to call my neighbors Olivia and Gerald for this particular story. So, Olivia and Gerald are these older couple. I wouldn't say elderly couple, just older. I would say, in their maybe 50s or 60s. And when I had first moved in here, it was actually really nice. Like, we got along very well, helped each other out here and there. It was really nice, actually, in the beginning. I guess that some stuff had actually happened prior to me living at this current place I am at. And I laugh because I told my landlord I really wish he would have told me prior, just because it might not have deterred me away from this house. However, it would have been able to give me a little bit of a heads up, would have been amazing. So, when just before I had moved into this house, I guess at some point when my landlord had bought the place and was fixing up the property, he had accidentally ran over a rose bush, which was technically in the garden bed of our property where I currently live. And Olivia, my neighbor, she had, I guess, ran out, was screaming, being like, "Well, that's my mother's rose bush, and how dare you do that?" and da 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 da. And that was a whole incident on its own. Would have given me a little bit of a heads up as to the crazy that I now have experienced and hopefully will stop experiencing. So, the first ever incident that I had had with my neighbors, Gerald and Olivia, is that my first year of moving here, I decided to ask my landlord, hey, is it okay if I build a compost bin For those of you who don't know, compost bin basically is just food scraps and whatnot that you can put into a bin, circulate it throughout the year, and it eventually turns into some really good soil for your garden or, flower beds or anything like that. And I got the okay from my landlord. I showed him the spot that I wanted to put it in. It's in between these two trees next to the garage of my neighbors, but not on their property, if that makes sense. So I had gotten the okay from my landlord. We double checked to make sure that that was something that was allowed, and it totally was. So I had built it out of these pallets, these wooden pallets, and it had only been up for, I think, a day or two at that point, and I get a call from my landlord. Apparently, Olivia had called my landlord because they do have each other's numbers and was screaming and complaining about the compost bin and was saying it was such an eyesore that I needed to get rid of it, da da da. And I apologized to my landlord. I'm like, I thought it was okay. And he goes, no, it's totally fine. You can keep it up. I don't know why she's complaining, but you're fine as long as it doesn't, smell bad or anything. I'm like, no, really, it doesn't. At least to me, it doesn't, I should say. And so nothing really ever came from that interaction, but I just thought it was a little funny ease into the whole chaos. So the second encounter that I ever had with my neighbor, I think this was the following year. I It didn't actually have anything to do with me, but I thought it was really funny to share. So my landlord decided to come out. He owns a couple of houses on the same street, and a lot of them needed the trees trimmed because they were just leaning over, possibly hitting a power line or might fall on a car. So for safety reasons, he decided to come over and start trimming some of the trees around our property. And good old Gerald and Olivia had come out and was angry, saying that he was cutting down their trees, that it was technically, since it was leaning over the fence, it's technically theirs. How dare they, blah, blah, blah. And to solve that issue, they ended up getting some of their trees trimmed for free by him. I think that was the whole point of the whole argument, was to get my landlord to do something for them for free. But that's just me. Maybe it's not, but who knows. So I kind of was getting annoyed by this point. I'm like, man, it seems like every little thing I do needs to be approved by my landlord or by my neighbors. I couldn't really tell at this point. But yeah, so that had happened. And then I want to say it was the same summer or the year after, we had decided to build a tire swing. And I made sure with my landlord, again, hey, for this tire swing, like, we wanted to add like some little pieces of wood that we could climb up the tree to, do maintenance and stuff over the years. And he said, as long as it's not facing the street or anything like that, that is totally fine by me. Well, it wasn't okay with Gerald or Olivia. They decided to come over, start yelling at us, claiming that we were ruining their stuff and we were damaging the tree and da da da. And by this point, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's already done. I'm sorry, I guess. I don't know. It at this point, it was just becoming so nitpicky. But the big the big incident, which had happened last year, was I got a knock at the door. I was doing some dishes in my kitchen, and I saw that it was Gerald. Gerald and I actually don't butt heads a lot as me and Olivia do, so I was like, hey, Gerald, what's going on? What do you need? Da da da. And he says, hey, I'm looking for Seth, my partner. I just got a new truck. I wanted to show it off to him. We were talking about possibly selling it to him eventually. And I said, yeah, he's not home right now, but I don't mind taking a look at it. Like, it'd be fun, kind of do something other than, what I was doing. So I go out and we're sitting and chatting about this truck. And I hear some banging and crashing going on in the in the house of Gerald and Olivia, and I turn to Gerald and I go, "Hey, is everything okay? Like, it sounds like Olivia fell or something." And he goes, "Oh no, she's throwing a fit. I just don't want to deal with it right now." And I went, "Oh, okay. I kind of get it, you know? Sometimes you gotta, take a second away from each other." But anyway, so we're still chatting about the truck, and out of nowhere, a ceramic mug comes flying at me. And I am so stunned at this point, and I kind of start turning my head towards the direction the mug came from and got smacked in the forehead by a snow shovel. I I was so baffled at this point. I didn't know what was going on. It's Olivia on the front porch who had thrown that lovely snow shovel and was screaming at me and screaming at Gerald, and she just screamed at the top of her lungs, "You're sleeping with my husband, da 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 da." The biggest thing I can remember from that argument was her screaming at Gerald, "I see you're hanging out with your WHOR, you know the other one." Yeah, that word. So I was just so baffled. It was borderline funny to me, but also like I didn't get what was going on. So I just kind of turned to Gerald, said, "I'm leaving now." And he goes, "Yeah, I get it." And then I went back inside my house, waited for Seth to come home, and told him this entire scenario. Looking back on the whole situation, I really do wish I would have called the city or the police or something to have on record, because I was way too forgiving in that scenario, considering in my mindset I was like, it's a older woman possibly having a mental breakdown. It was just super duper odd. And I am mad at my past self to this day that I should have done something about it. So yeah, that was the biggest incident. The most recent incident, if it was any consolation, it just kept getting worse, by the way, is that my lovely, lovely neighbor Olivia, it just I guess didn't give up on the whole scenario. I had received a letter in the mail from the city claiming that my backyard was a biohazard, which was really confusing because when I got this letter and I'm looking outside in my backyard, it's a wood pile and a garbage can full of aluminum cans. I collect them sometimes so that I can take them to the scrapyard to get a couple extra bucks just for fun. And I couldn't really figure out why they would be calling or sending me a letter about this, I should say. And so I called and I'm like, "Hey, could you clarify?" I guess they were claiming that like I had sticks all over the yard or something, that just it was a biohazard for that. I just complied and I said, "Hey, by any chance, are you able to tell me who sent in this complaint?" And lo and behold, it was none other than Olivia. And boy, oh boy, was I mad at this point. I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I couldn't move. I still can't move because the living situation is honestly really good for the price that it's at. And I can't afford to live anywhere else. But I was just so fed up at this point. So I cleaned my yard and I thought that was the end of it. Actually, 2 days ago, I got a letter in the mail. This is about a year. No, I don't want to say a year. I want to say like 9, 10 months later, I got another letter saying I failed to comply. So I went back outside and decided to go through my yard again. There really wasn't anything. And I glance over and I see good old Olivia standing on her porch with her phone in hand pointed at me, recording me. And I don't know. I don't know what else to do. At this point, we're gonna just try and have a one-on-one conversation with them to kind of clear this, but I am just so fed up at this point with this neighbor. I can't do it anymore. You can only give so many excuses for so long. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an insight as to my crazy neighbor story. If anybody else has ever experienced a neighbor like this, I would love to hear some of your guys' stories if you want to put them in the comments. But yeah, that's been the rundown. I don't plan on moving anytime soon, just I can't afford to right now, but any more instances, I'm going to have to call the city. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed and got to see cool process of making some Pokemon dessert drawings. But yeah, here's the finished product.